Have you ever felt the desire to change the path that you're on? How about changing your path when it might not seem the obvious choice to everyone else? Stay tuned now for an all new episode of One. Welcome, everyone. You're watching One presented by The Breakthrough Show. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I'm super excited to be back with you for another episode this evening and welcoming back a previous guest of The Breakthrough Show as well. Our guest today has, like I said, been a previous guest of The Breakthrough Show in a previous life, not literally, figuratively. She was an attorney, but now she is the CEO and founder of her own executive coaching company. Let's welcome back to the Breakthrough Show Network, Hana Dhanji. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you back today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm thrilled for this journey that you've been on. I've been watching since you were on the show the first time, and you're blowing up the coaching scene over here. It's amazing.
I feel very blessed to be able to do what I love every day and to serve such incredible people. And as you correctly noted, Jessica, it's been an evolution. I think I started with corporate professionals, and now I'm really focusing on law students, which is a journey I can't wait to tell you more about.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. Well, with that said, I would love for you to tell us your one story, Hana.
Absolutely. So this is truly a privilege to be able to share with you the journey that I've been on over the last 35 years, and to really explain how passion, purpose, and drive really infuse every day of my life based on fairly humble beginnings, and most importantly, based on the grace that I have received at the most pivotal stages in my life. And anything that I've achieved in my life or will continue to achieve is entirely a byproduct of the incredible generosity, spirit, and humanity that I have felt so privileged to have throughout the most important stages in each of the biggest turning points in my life, which I wanted to share with you today. So my journey actually begins with my grandparents, both of whom on my mother and father's side grew up in India. They were the first entrepreneurs and the first trailblazers, I think, that I can attribute my own success to. They both independently, so my grandparents didn't know each other, of course. They came from India, and my dad's side moved to East Africa. So my dad actually himself grew up in Kenya, in Mombasa, a beautiful coastal town in the south part of the country. And my mother grew up in Malaysia, in a village. And the thing that bound both of them together is that they felt it was so important for the development of themselves, their future children, and of course, in the evolutionary progress of humanity, education was the way to unlock the doors to the future. So despite growing up in fairly low-income circumstances, my father barefoot would walk to school every day with his shirt ironed, with his 6 brothers, and they would attend classes that were predominantly informed by the British education system. So in Kenya, which was a former British colony, the British sort of well-rounded liberal arts education in which both sciences as well as English and history, political science, and social studies were emphasized was part of his upbringing. So when he and my mother met in England, which is where she had traveled to from Malaysia to study nursing and where he had gone to study accountancy, they made a decision that when they had children of their own, education and a well-rounded upbringing would inform that childhood. I was born in England. in 1987 and came to Canada with my family when I was only 3 months old. And unfortunately, a lot of the degrees my parents earned and the education that they received, both in Malaysia, Kenya, and in England, was not transferable directly to the Canadian context. So my mother, despite having a nursing background when she was in England and becoming a head nurse in a ward in St. George's Hospital in Tooting, London, when she was only 23 years old, none of that education actually translated into the Canadian context. So at the time when she was writing her equivalency exams, she was cleaning houses and cleaning toilets and mopping floors when we were very young. And I remember growing up and seeing this tremendous work ethic that she had. It didn't matter that by most standards, people would look at her and say the job was beneath her. She treated the opportunity to earn income with a high degree of gratitude and grace and dignity. So she showed up to mop those floors the way she would have in the ward as a nurse, and she folded that laundry as if it were one of the beds of the patients she would be serving. She had this meticulous way about her, and not a single opportunity that she was ever given was taken for granted. So seeing that level of work ethic and seeing how incredibly devoted she was to being the best at whatever she did, I sort of grew up with very high standards for myself. Early on, that was a double-edged sword. The good part about having high standards for yourself is, of course, that you're going to push yourself to excel. The downside is you're going to be extremely hard on yourself, and you're not going to give yourself much grace at all for the small errors that you may make along the way. So I walked a very narrow path, a very tight path, and it didn't allow for a lot of creativity or fun. So to be honest, growing up, I didn't ask the questions that I now as an adult realize were some of the most important I should have been asking. Does this light me up? Does it fulfill me in a way that allows me to become a better version of myself? Am I becoming something or someone who not only does a good job and meets those high standards of excellence, but is there spirit with me when I do it? Is there joy? Is there light? Is there a contribution to the betterment of the world and humanity? Without this element of giving back, without this element of service to others, without this element of humanity, your highest standard of excellence will always be limited. Because what makes somebody go from good to great is something that we cannot fully attribute to our own skill set or our own work ethic. We need support from the universe, from grace, from whatever sort of exists out there beyond ourselves. We need that lift, that moment where you sort of transcend your own limitations and abilities, and you're able to channel like energy from the universe around you to be able to go to a place that's even greater than what you could have imagined. That space of excellence, that X factor element, comes from tapping into source, from tapping into an inner knowing, and from having a very clear understanding of when you're in alignment, when you're dialed in, and most importantly, when you're acting from a place of generosity. So to the extent that we want success for ourselves, that's good. And that's a type of fuel that will take you so far. If you want to go that extra mile and become something great, something memorable, if you want to create a legacy in your field, you have to be thinking beyond just your need and your gain. You have to be thinking about what you can contribute to the well-being of others. That's when you really propel yourself to the next level of success. So I hadn't learned that when I was younger. I really thought, what can I do for me, and how can I work hard, and it's all on my shoulders, and I've got to walk this tight, narrow path and excel to this standard. So very, very sad, very heavy feeling childhood. It did take me quite a long way, I have to say. I did end up being that scholarship kid, even though I grew up in a low-income background in Scarborough. I was the scholarship kid who made it into one of the best schools, private schools in Canada, called the University of Toronto Schools. And I was the subsidized child there. I was somebody who didn't necessarily get driven to school in a Mercedes or a BMW. I didn't have all the fancy clothes or vacations, but I did have a world-class education at my disposal. And so I continued to work hard, and thankfully was admitted later on to the University of Toronto for my undergraduate studies in psychology, international relations, and health studies. From there, upon graduation, I decided to pursue a master's degree in international affairs in Switzerland. And I wanted to do it in a space where I could look beyond my own needs, look beyond myself, and think about how my education could serve the world. And so I actually ended up interning at the World Health Organization, looking at how health and security could come together. I did a stint in Washington, D.C. as well, working, I was at the Elliott School of International Affairs and got to see how the US side of healthcare funding affects global health in general. And this was at a time prior, right around actually, when SARS was happening several years earlier. So I had done my master's in 2012. I remember using SARS as a case study. And a lot of the research I had done on health and security globally actually ended up being something that allowed me to understand what happened during COVID-19 and how we deal with global disease outbreaks and containment efforts. So from there, one might ask, what does one do with a global health security background? Well, I personally thought I was going to go into diplomacy and become the next ambassador. But when I came back to Canada after the 2012 graduation from my master's degree, a lot of the embassies, the Canadian embassies abroad, were being closed. And the Foreign Service exam was not being administered that year by the Canadian government. So in 2013, I enrolled in law school thinking maybe there's something more for me I can do by advancing my education. I basically returned back to the old way of thinking, which is that more education will allow me more opportunities. In law school, I took a very corporate focus and combined it with an MBA and went on to New York and to Wall Street. And there I saw what I assumed was the highest level of expertise and excellence I could ever reach. I mean, what more is there to do with one's life once you've landed as a corporate lawyer on Wall Street? But once again, that question came to mind. I had only ever asked myself during my 4-year JD MBA degree at the University of Toronto, could I make it to Wall Street? Never once did I ask, should I? Is this totally in alignment with what I am meant to do? The service that I am meant to provide for others, for this world, for humanity. I was not being nourished in the way that I needed to be. I was not accessing alignment or spirit or channeling any kind of wholesome energy when I was working as a lawyer. It was very mind-centric. It was a very mentally taxing process that I was going through there. And I soon found that unless my heart was in something along with my head, I could never excel the way that I wanted to. I would never be the best at my profession. And so I did something truly unconventional. For the first time, I sat down and I asked, does this make me happy? Am I becoming a better version of myself? Am I considering other people's needs more than my own on a daily basis, or at least as much? And what I realized was that this was not the profession for me. So despite all the sacrifice of my grandparents and my parents, despite all the struggles they went through to put me through the best education they could, I walked away from Wall Street. Now, this was after having spent a bit of time not only in New York, but also in the London office of the firm I was with, and then moving to a different firm in Dubai. It didn't matter that I was in a different firm. It didn't matter that I was in a different city or country. If you are fundamentally misaligned in the area of practice that you have in your profession, you cannot show up as your full self. So then the question became, what was I going to do with the rest of my life? And I went back to my origins and my roots. I realized I've always loved connecting with people. At the end of the day, my mother was a nurse. Her mother actually was a village elder that did nursing in her community. And I realized I have a lineage of healers in my family. So what if my real purpose was to leverage my education to heal this planet, to heal others? And I thought, how can I, instead of walking away from my corporate background entirely, what if I could become the coach for lost students who are misaligned, who are lost for direction, who are not asking the right questions, like, does this make me happy? And am I becoming a better version of myself through my profession? When I realized that this is something that an area in which I could add value, I could become a coach for law students and help them to become better versions of themselves, I got to combine my past, the lineage and the ancestors, the line of healers in my family. I could combine the spirit of that with my professional background, bring it together and become an executive coach. So I basically threw my hands up in the air and said, let's give it a shot. I said to the universe, if this is what I'm meant to do, I need a sign. And so this year in April, I launched the first workshop for law students across 23 law schools in Canada and said, whoever wants to learn about what it takes to become a good lawyer, to land the best jobs you can in corporate law, whether it's on Wall Street or in Toronto, I want you to come to this workshop. And within 3 days, 250 people had signed up, which was my clear sign that I had hit on something. And in the 2 months, so that was in April, we're looking at June right now. In the 2 months since that first workshop, I've onboarded close to 30 clients. The income has been over 150,000. Like, I cannot tell you, this was a clear and resounding signal from the universe that I was tapping into an unmet need. And I truly asked myself with great humility, am I really that good? Or is there something that's supporting me that extends beyond what I can see and touch and feel? And I can honestly say, I think there is something that I am channeling through me when I do my work, which makes me believe that when we are on the right path professionally, when we have checked in with ourselves and asked, is this what I am meant to do with my life? There is a greater energy that lifts us up to a new level of excellence that no work ethic and that no mental process could ever bring you to. So if you are somebody, whether you're a law student, a lawyer, or you're a professional of any kind, and you are thinking, what high performance tools or techniques can I use to get to the next level? I am telling you, it's actually not going to come from here. It's going to come from checking in and aligning in here. And I truly, truly believe it was that wisdom that I gained by stumbling and falling, by realizing that I wasn't happy in the one profession I thought was going to bring me all the happiness in the world, that I'm able to do what I do today, earn the income that I do today, be in alignment the way I am today, and serve others the way I do. It was by asking, does this light me up? Does this make me happy? Am I a better version of myself today than I was yesterday? So if I can leave you with any sort of wisdom, it's that your heart is actually the greatest determinant of your success, and your mind is simply there to follow and support. That's my one story.
I am trying to hold it together back here. I had no idea what this year had in store for you. Did you have any idea what this year had in store for you?
No, literally not at all. I came into it and I thought, let's just try it. Let's just go back. When I left law, I'll be honest, I was so burnt out, so unhappy that I thought I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole ever again, only to find that I would come back to enrich the space, not to walk away from it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's incredible to me. And I have I'm shaking right now, because when you were on the show initially, I said, listen, this girl's got something that is a really big deal. And you were toying around with, like, what is this going to look like?
Yeah.
And I'm just completely blown away right now. It's something. It really is. I'm so excited for you.
And I wish I could say that I had thought it all out and it was strategic. there is divine intervention written all over this. Like, I cannot claim this as knowledge that I had. And for whatever you're going through, Jessica, and I mean this, whatever struggles you're going through, allow space for the universe to support you. Because when I asked my mother how she managed with 3 kids, she ended up divorcing my dad, which wasn't in the story per se. But when I asked her how she managed with 3 kids on her own, she says, I to this day cannot explain how I did it. But I can tell you honestly that something was there with me the whole time.
Yeah. It's amazing. You can look back and you may not understand in the moment. Yeah. Why are things unfolding the way they're unfolding, especially in those challenging roller coaster moments. But then you look back and you're like, oh, it was for me.
Huge. When I left, I was so unhappy. I literally thought I was a failure. Legit. I was like, oh my God, I am the dropout. I'm like the high school dropout, but the Wall Street version. I don't care how prestigious it sounds. I'm still the dropout. Only to realize that, look, in order to do what I do now, I had to go through that. I would have zero credibility if I'd just been the coach who understood law in theory rather than in practice. So my clients get back to me every single day, seeing kids like grow, seeing them build confidence in themselves, seeing them develop self-esteem. These are, it's just I change lives, and that means so much. And not from an egoic point of view, but from like a heart connection point of view. And I realized that I need that in my work. And it turns out your heart can't connect with a bond offering or a culture. Like it just doesn't give back the same way.
I'm sure of that. My one question for you today is you had this experience where the hard work that you witnessed in your parents impacted that level of expectation that you had for yourself. And sometimes we know that those expectations can come from outside of us as well. We've had several people on the show whose parents said, this is the path you shall take. And that's what they took because they thought that they had to. As you are working now with executives, young attorneys, things like that, and you come across that person who has the have to, whether it's from their internal voices or the external voices, what do you say to give them that permission to experience the want to?
Yeah. I would ask them to monitor their energy. And here's what I mean by that. When you are fueled by compulsion that is fundamentally driven by fear or shame or guilt or judgment, which is what I have to is, it's a you aren't good enough unless sort of mindset or programming in your subconscious. It is a fuel that is very short burn. It's high octane and then it flames out really quickly. So you'll find that if fear is driving you, it'll push you only to a point and then you'll collapse. This is where you experience medical issues, burnout, health problems. But when it's a want to, it's a replenishable, renewable fuel source where you can wake up every day with a full tank versus being so drained the previous day from driving yourself through a wall that the next day you feel increasingly more tired. So monitor the energy. And when you realize the cost, energetic cost of coming from a fear or shame or guilt or sadness-based place, you will actually, your subconscious mind is programmed to ensure your survival. It's a survival preserving mechanism that's locked into the subconscious because that's the part of the brain that's evolutionarily developed. It's the part that is instinctive and reflexive. It's the part that seems to react and we have to consciously process it later. That subconscious is designed to keep us safe. If it realizes through your own inner reflection, if you can help your subconscious mind realize that coming from a place of I have to is actually hurting your survival and diminishing your ability to live a longer, better, happier life, it will shift. It's the aha moment that will drive you out of the place of I have to do I really want to? And if I want to, this is going to feel so good every day. And then practice the want. It's about checking in with yourself. That's all it is. That's what growth is.
I love that. That alone is going to change so many people's way of thinking today, because I talk to at least one person a day who is completely burnt out with what they're doing.
100%.
It's becoming the normal, and that makes me sad. It really does. And so just, I think reminding us to check in is so important. I'm so thankful. I'd heard, like I said, I'd heard some of your story, obviously, when you came on the Breakthrough Show Network the first time. And now you're going to come on in another year and a half, and it's going to be, you may not come on in a year and a half. You may be like, I don't have time. I have so much going on.
No, I'm always happy to be here. It is nice to actually have these checkpoints with you to even acknowledge the progress that's been made over the period of time since we last spoke.
It's fun for me as well. It reminds me of, Billie Eilish. Every year she does the same interview, and now she's gotten to look back at those exact same spaces and questions and everything else, and it's cool. I kind of get to do the same thing with my guests, and so I'm really excited that you've got such amazing things going on. And I would love for you to tell everybody where to find you and what you have going on right now.
Absolutely. So rolling across the bottom of the screen is my LinkedIn handle. So please make sure that you connect with me on LinkedIn, and do reach out if you have any questions about your own professional development trajectory, or if you're a law student in Canada or in the United States looking for guidance on how to land your dream job in corporate law, whether that's in Wall Street, New York, or whether it's in any part of Canada. Or if you're somebody who is partway through law school or a professional program, just looking for guidance on how to translate your academic education into a meaningful professional skill set that will allow you to hit the ground running, you can also find my booking link on the the LinkedIn page that's currently scrolling across the bottom. And my book, Leveraging Your Law School Degree, is coming out at the end of August. And I will be starting a new monthly coaching program that you can join if you like for those in law school across the US and Canada. And that's called the Law School Edge. So do ping me if you're interested in learning more about that. And it's going to be a way to help you develop your professional skills while you're still a student, so you hit the ground running when you graduate.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being here today, Hana. It's so good to see you. Great to catch up. And thank you for sharing your story with everyone. Like I said, I think it's going to impact a lot of people, even if they're not a lawyer. Even if they're not a lawyer, they're going to get so much out of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you too, Jessica. Wishing you all the best.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching or listening wherever you are in the world today. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I'll see you next time for another guest, another one story, and one question. We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.